welcome to NESCOT and the Epsom and Ewell constituency hustings. Before we begin, just some housekeeping and health and safety. Well, health first. There's water at the door as you come in if anybody is thirsty. It's free. Please help yourselves. And the toilets are at the top of the stairs too. Obviously, the fire exits are where you came in. So if anything happens or there's an alarm, make your way straight there as quickly and calmly as you can. Thanks. So my name is Grant Leonard. I'm an editorial board member for the Epsom and Ewell Times, which has organised these hustings in partnership with NESCOT. We'd like to thank NESCOT for this opportunity and this wonderful venue. And before we start with the hustings, may I welcome on stage to say a few words from NESCOT, the Principal and Chief Executive, Julie Capsalis.
Thank you very much. You'll be pleased to know I'm not going to say very much because it's so hot and I know you want to hear from the candidates, but I just wanted to extend a very warm welcome to NESCOT as we celebrate our 70th anniversary this year. I'm absolutely delighted to be hosting this event in partnership with the Epsom and Ewell Times this evening. Just to let you know that we do have a couple of film crews, including a film crew of our students and from ITV filming this evening. If you would prefer, if you are asking a question or you think you're on shot for not to be used, can you please either make yourself known to me at the end or speak to the crew who are up there, and we will ensure that your footage is not used. But without further ado, I think I'm going to pass back for the candidates if you're welcome. But thank you for coming to the college this evening, and I hope to see you back here again. Thank you.
Right, now a bit of an advert for the Epsom and Ewell Times. First of all, if you're not aware, it is your local online newspaper written for the community, by the community. If you've never seen it, you can scan the QR code at the front here and possibly on the screen in a short while. And that will take you to the website where you can sign up for our weekly newsletter, which will bring you up to date on all local news and community matters and events. You can volunteer to help gather news yourselves and indeed support the paper with your donations. Epsom and Ewell Times is a not-for-profit organisation with no political colour, so don't read too much into my trousers. All of our candidates here tonight have been interviewed by the Epsom and Ewell Times, and that is the page that you will arrive at when you scan the QR code. They're on video, and they're great, very involved and interesting. So the hustings will run like this. We'll welcome the candidates on stage, and then each candidate will give a 2-minute slot to present themselves and their case for the election. They'll then take their seats on the panel and answer questions from you, the audience. If you've been chosen to ask a question, please wait until we hand you the microphone so that everybody can hear what you're saying. Tonight's hustings is hosted and moderated by the founder of the Epsom and Ewell Times. He's a local legal aid solicitor, ex-councillor, international human rights campaigner, and local community champion. He's lived in Epsom all his life. Welcome, Lionel Blackman. Tonight, Lionel will be managing the candidates in their responses to all your questions and keeping the debate fair and orderly. Channeling his inner Robin Day, and for the younger ones amongst you, will be channeling his inner Fiona Bruce. So, to the candidates. Our first candidate is Guyanese British business owner and Remain campaigner who famously initiated the 2016 court case against the British government over its authority to implement Brexit without approval from Parliament. She stands for the True and Fair Party, so please welcome on stage Gina Miller. Our next candidate is a British Labour Party politician who is the MP for South Derbyshire, from 1997 to 2010. He had a career in publishing and has been councillor for Cambridge City. He stands for the Labour Party as their energy expert, so please welcome on stage Mark Todd. Our next candidate is a lawyer who worked for an international law firm and who has worked in food research before turning her attention to politics. She is second-time candidate for the Conservative Party, so please welcome on stage Mari Fraser. Our next candidate was a professional town planner and chartered surveyor for over 35 years and a councillor for Reigate and Banstead. He's been working full-time for a community-based charity in Oxfordshire. Please welcome on stage the candidate for the Green Party, Stephen McKenna. Our next candidate was a captain in the Royal Military Police in the British Army until 2005. She has served as a parish councillor and is now a fundraising consultant involved in various local and national charities for which she has been awarded the British Empire Medal. Please welcome on stage the candidate for the Liberal Democrat Party, Our final candidate making up our panel tonight is a dentist with the Wardle Dental Clinic in Ashford, Middlesex, and he's a published author and lecturer on Hindu religion and philosophy. Please welcome on stage the candidate for the Reform UK Party, Byron Senthil Nathan. Over to you, Lionel.
Thank you very much, Grant. Gina Miller, first up, lectern, please, 2 minutes.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, NESCOT, and thank you, Epsom Times, for hosting this hustings this evening. I'm standing here to offer you a choice, a positive choice, based on my experience for 34 years as a campaigner, who's worked across areas such as SEND education, special needs, financial services, charities, you name it. I've probably done more of it in 34 years than most people have in their professional life. And why is that? Based on the fact that I believe that when you see injustice, you need to stand up. That when you see things are wrong, you need to speak out. We must not be bullied by those in power. We have to hold the people we elect to the highest possible standards. If they are not, then they should go. So I'm offering you an opportunity to be, if you like, help you with the experience I've got to date. Because we cannot predict what will happen in the next 5 years. No one can. But what I can tell you and promise you is that I will use my experience, my connections, and my expertise to stand alongside you, your families, your friends, and your community. So that shoulder to shoulder, we will fight whatever comes. Because we are, as Paul Johnson, the IFS, has said, sitting against a backdrop of a conspiracy of silence in the manifestos that have been published by the main political parties. They are not telling us the truth about the economic situation, the social situation, the mental health of our country. We need to be putting together systemic changes. And I believe that in Epsom and Ewell, this is the heart of the place where we can start looking at those solutions. Be it bringing wellbeing hubs into our community, working with partnerships between business, public and private. Because the truth is, no public person in the future is going to be able to tackle the aging of our population, the mental health of our population, the issues coming down the track when it comes to the environment and geopolitical instability. Unless we have different models, be it economic models, social models, health models, we cannot provide a better place future for our children and our grandchildren.
Time is running. Yes. Thank you very much. Some seats to be marked reserved and now can be taken from members outside schools. Next up then, please, Mark Todd.
Thank you, Lionel, for organising the hustings this evening, and thank you to NESCOT. It's an honour to stand here as a candidate for MP, the constituency where I live. It's also an honour to stand alongside these fine other individuals, I'm sure, who will make a fine MP if elected. A bit about me. So I studied politics and economics at Oxford University. I co-founded one of the UK's largest energy price comparison services at 28 years old. Recommended by Martin Lewis and Powering Compare the Markets energy service, we organised 10 million switches and employed 350 people. I campaigned tirelessly to ban and rip off energy tariffs, and actually convinced the Conservative government to bring in the energy price cap, because I was organising switches, but a lot of people weren't switching and were still being ripped off. I grew up in Manchester, as maybe you can tell by my accent, but I moved to London at 22, and I've lived in Epsom with my family now for the last 15 years. Having an MP who lives in the constituency with his family will be a big advantage for the area. I shop in the same shops, I go to the same parks, I walk in the same hills, I use the same roads as all of you. I cycle for Epsom Cycling Club, I run for a local running club, and I organise one of the biggest charity running races every year on Epsom Downs with the Tadworth 10 and with other people at Tadworth. I'm also a trustee at the Ewell Community Centre, and I wrote a business plan to save it from demolition, working with cross-party with the fantastic Bernie Muir, with people from the Liberal Democrats too, and also with the local Greens. I got Thames Water to around the table and agreed a plan to stop them polluting the Hogsmill, reducing that pollution by 80%. As your MP, I work in this community every day for you. I work constructively, cross-party, not just for the Labour Party. I will not take a second job. This is not an 80% job. This is a 200% job being the MP for Epsom and Ewell.
Thank you very much.
Epsom and Ewell has been my family home for almost 20 years. All three of my younger siblings were educated here. I can be found behind the bar, blowing pints at the Marks of Granby, and my mother loves it so much she has never left. Our home is very special, and I have a personal drive to protect it. I made a promise to you from day one that I would run a clean campaign, that I would challenge the Liberal Democrats and Labour's policies, because I think they would be harmful to our green spaces, our businesses, and our schools, but that I would never demean our politics by attacking my opponents as individuals. I have kept that promise to you. That is why you have never seen a leaflet through the door, a Facebook or a Twitter post, or heard me on the doorsteps demeaning the people that sit on the stage with me, because I can respect them even if we come from opposite political viewpoints. I do that for two reasons. One, I think there has been far too much division and hostility in our politics over recent years that has helped no one. But second, if I am fortunate enough to be elected as your MP, I'm going to have to work with councillors and MPs and ministers from across the political spectrum to deliver for you. And I will do that much better if I have not created hostility during this campaign. So I've kept that promise, but it is the first of many promises to you I will keep, from fighting alongside you to protect Greenbelt, to getting better commuter services, to pushing for a more visible police presence on our streets. I'm a traditional Conservative, and I think those principles are what will deliver best for you. I believe in personal freedom and personal responsibility to make the most of your potential. I believe in rewarding aspiration and hard work while creating a safety net for the most vulnerable. I believe in a hand up, not a handout. I believe in small government that defends your fundamental interests but otherwise gets out of your way. And I believe in being very proud of this country's past while being very excited and ambitious for its future. I've spent the last decade building a career as an anti-corruption lawyer, from defending Nobel Peace Prize winners from persecution from foreign governments to helping the world's most influential companies and governments fight money laundering.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
See, I need to do a bit of practice being a bit more over, but I've learned that. Stephen McKenna.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Stephen McKenna. I'm a professional town planner and charter surveyor. I live in Redhill, where I've been an elected borough councillor for Ewell councillor for the last 8 years for the Green Party. I joined the Greens in 2011 because I was appalled by the expensive scandals in the main parties, and I'm now one of 13 Greens in the council there. A major issue in this election is the lack of trust in politics. The last few years have seen one crisis after another. We now need an investment programme to fix broken Britain. This is not a time for timidity or hiding any plans. We will fix the NHS and social care and build national renewal in the face of climate, housing, and cost of living emergencies. We need honesty. Despite the claims that the Greenbelt must be protected, weakening the planning system cannot achieve this. The main parties need growth to avoid cuts in public services, and they plan to build up to 1.9 million homes over the next 5 years across the country. That's about 3 Birminghams, just to say. It's especially tragic as there's no need to do this. It's just about money. We've got plenty of housing, it's just too pricey. And it's a total myth that somehow if we build hundreds of thousands more every year, this will bring house prices down. Our vision is different. We will ban development in the Greenbelt, we'll create social housing, and we're going to cap private rents. We have a fully costed, ambitious plan, and we will also take back control of water, energy, and railways. The Institute of Fiscal Studies recognises this is a bold, ambitious plan, and they say, unlike the other parties, it will deliver sustainable growth. Finally, I understand the temptation to think about voting tactically due to our undemocratic first-past-the-post system. However, even with a national majority for Labour, as it looks like, a huge swing will still be needed to beat the Conservatives here. So in these circumstances, you should vote for what you believe in. I'm not telling you, I'm just advising.
Thank you very much.
I hope you consider voting Green. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Helen Maguire, the Parliamentary candidate for the Lib Democrats. I'm an army veteran and I've served my country in both Bosnia and Iraq. And since then I've set up 2 successful businesses, one in health and wellbeing and the other a charity fundraising consultancy. And over that time I've raised over £1 million for charities nationwide. I've also been a charity leader, a parish councillor, and last year I was absolutely honoured to receive the British Empire Medal by His Majesty the King. In my spare time, I race the Epsom and Ewell Harriers running club, and I also help out at the local food bank in Leatherhead. The food bank tells a story of a broken country, but it's not just food banks. It's the economy, the NHS, housing, climate, schools, all in crisis after years of conservative neglect, and you can no longer swim in rivers or seas for fear of sewage. The Conservatives have wrecked our relationship with our nearest neighbour, Europe, and our political system is simply not fit for purpose. This is a crucial election, and one that I hope sees the end of this Conservative government after the sleaze, the lies, the disastrous mini-budget, number 10 lockdown parties, and a Prime Minister that couldn't outlast the lettuce. This election is a referendum on the Conservative Party. But it's so much more than this, because so much damage has been done to trust in politicians, and we want to rebuild this and give people the fair deal that they deserve. The Lib Democrat Manifesto has ambitious commitments on the environment, NHS and social care, and cutting the cost of living. Every vote for a Lib Democrat is a vote for a fair deal. I've served my country and I've served my community. I have a proven track record of hard work and delivery. I'm not a career politician, I'm a local mum with 3 teenage kids. I understand your struggles, hopes and dreams. I want to listen, act and deliver real change. You deserve better, and I hope that on the 4th of July you vote for change, you vote for me, Helen Maguire. Thank you.
That's right. I think we're witnessing something quite extraordinary in British political history at the moment. We're witnessing the demise and the decay of the Conservative Party and the rise, the extraordinary rise of a small insurgent party, Reform UK. We are now polling nationally second in the polls, which I believe gives us a national mandate to be in opposition. See, I have no doubt that the candidates here are full of integrity. I believe they're fully sincere, but at the end of the day, they are shackled to establishment parties. You remember the pandemic? What was the choice? Lockdown or lockdown harder? That was the choice. That is not democracy. If you remember, if you look going forward, what do we have going forward? High tax, higher taxes, because the tax thresholds will not go up. That means nurses and teachers will have to pay higher taxes. If we look forward going to the population crisis, 750,000 people net coming in every single year. What's that going to do for the housing market? What is that going to do for councils who weaponise that reality and look to develop the green belt? What are we going to do about net zero? Did we vote for net zero? Net zero is a government policy costing £1 to £2 trillion. It offshores industry elsewhere where they still burn the same carbon. It levies your fuel bills, which makes them more expensive, and it has a negligible effect on the climate. Epsom Ewell Hospital. What about the waiting list? I'm an NHS dentist. What you will hear is the normal platitude: more GPs, more frontline staff. But at the end of the day, it needs fundamental reform. The very system needs fundamental reform, and we have a bold plan to do that. So I'm asking for your vote for something radically different. I'm asking for your vote to cause a political earthquake in Westminster. Thank you very much.
Whatsoever questions that we'll be inviting the audience to ask. Firstly, right order. Roland Hall.
Chairman.
Roland Hall.
Can't hear.
Someone's turned my mic off. Can you hear me now? Roland Hall.
Could you put your hand up, please? Could you move it closer, please?
Roland Hall. Where are you? The lights are in my eyes, and I can't see you. Not here.
Okay.
Okay. Roger Miller.
Far side. My question is, how do you think Brexit is going?
How do you think Brexit is going? That's your question, Mr. Miller? Thank you. Well, let's start with Myron Central Nathan of the Labour Party.
So I think we're in a situation here where when something goes wrong with the hospitals, who do we blame? The Conservative Party. If something goes wrong with housing, who do we blame? The Conservative Party. Whatever is going wrong with infrastructure, and if it's going wrong nationally, we blame the Conservative Party. Somehow, when Brexit gets brought up, somehow Theresa May was the best negotiator in the whole world, and Brexit was the bad thing. Somehow Boris Johnson was the politician with the greatest integrity, and Brexit was the bad thing. Somehow Rishi Sunak's Windsor Framework deal was an amazing achievement, and Brexit was a bad thing. We seem to have this kind of weird place in our head, the media does as well, that whenever you bring up Brexit, the Conservative Party gets let off the hook, and somehow Brexit is blamed. And I think we have to understand, Brexit was a movement away from the EU, back to Parliament. It was to give Parliament more powers. It was to give Parliament more powers over our borders. And as I just explained, a population explosion happened. The Lib Dems seem to think I've gone to sleep on that. They don't even think it's happening. Labour wants it to happen, and the Conservatives made it happen.
Yeah, I think the point of the question is whether Brexit has been successful.
I think
its objectives.
I think it's achieved sovereignty. I think it's given us the powers to make our own laws. I think it's given us the powers to make trade deals where we wouldn't have been if we were in the EU. I think it has allowed us to align with movements that are growing faster than the EU. And if you look across the channel, you will see that France, Netherlands, Poland, Hungary, the cracks of the EU is already starting to fall. Give it another decade, you'll start to see that elected bureaucrats, people who are unelected bureaucrats running your country, it doesn't work. People want their sovereignty back. Unfortunately, the Conservatives have not used this opportunity of Brexit.
Okay, we'll come back to you later. Sheila Miller, how do you think Brexit's going?
So it's not going well for a number of reasons. The proponents of Brexit didn't actually understand how our relationship with the EU worked. So we Brexited with no real details of how our trade works, how staffing free movement for workers, it wasn't free movement for everyone, worked, and what that did to our economy and help our economy. They didn't understand the implications it would have for almost every sector of our country, who are now in suffering, be it from agriculture to fishing, to schools, to teachers, to every sector, social care, every sector has been impacted. And now they're obsessed with small votes. Before Brexit, before we had our referendum, look at the professional statistics and you will see that there was not one single small vote because we had something called the Dublin Returns Agreement. That was offered to Boris Johnson and he turned it down. But where we are now is that we are suffering and we must limit the damage. There are countless economist reports. There's from Bloomberg saying, it's hit our economy by 4%. The other centres saying it's 5.2%. The damage is there. And this idea that we are growing less than other countries, actually they're cherry picking because that data is only from 2020. If you look from 2016, when the referendum was called, UK's GDP is actually 1.7%, whereas the GDP in the Eurozone is 3.2. So they're cherry picking the figures. We are suffering. I don't need to give you statistics. Speak to any small businessman, speak to any foreign investment. I work in the investment field. Inward investment in this country is flatlining.
Okay, I think I need to give another candidate chance. Marion Fraser.
Any change of the magnitude of Brexit is going to come with difficulties, but I would like to share some figures because I do not agree that Brexit has been a disaster. These are the figures. GDP figures from last month show that the UK is now the joint fastest growing country in the G7 along with Canada. Faster than France, Germany, Italy, Japan and the United States. UN figures.
I'll ask the audience to come back.
UN
Can they finish?
figures, if I can finish, UN figures show that the UK is now the world's fourth largest exporter, the second largest exporter of services behind the US, and despite the dire predictions pre-Brexit, we are still the second largest exporter of financial services. We've secured trade deals with 73 countries plus the EU. Foreign direct investment in the UK is at its highest ever level. It is. And in the last 2 years, we've had the third highest level of foreign direct investment in the world after the US and China. That is just the figures. But I understand why people voted Remain. I do not think they were unpatriotic and did not love their country for doing so. And I understand. I said I do not think they were. And I also
we know it's a very hot evening, and the candidates I've been speaking to in the green room have agreed they're going to treat each other with respect, so I think the audience should also You could just wrap up. I want to then turn to Mark.
I could just, because I just need to finish this point, because it's quite important. I understand why people who voted Remain were very disappointed with the result, but it was the biggest democratic mandate the British people have ever given. People who have never voted before felt inspired to participate in the democratic process. It would do huge damage to the social fabric of our country if we turned around tomorrow and said, I'm sorry, you made the wrong decision, we're rejoining the EU.
Well, you say it's the biggest mandate. It was a vote of what, about 52 to 48? The referendum was 75. It was a 67% vote for staying. So, it's the biggest mandate then?
In terms of the number of people that came out to vote for Brexit, yes, it was the biggest democratic mandate ever for British people.
Well, of course,
But
the
we have a
population was
democracy
larger
and we
than-
vote regularly. We don't just vote once and that's it.
Oh, so actually, I'm going to ask Mark to take up this theme. I'll come back to yours now. Mark, Todd, Labour, your predictions are right that there's going to be this big Labour majority. Do you think there's any possibility of all those pro-EU Labour MPs wanting to use that majority to at least have another referendum, if not rejoin?
So Keir Starmer's been clear that we will renegotiate the deal. We accept Brexit, but we will renegotiate because the deal is too hard, and it is impractical. That's why our economy is suffering. That's why things are not getting better in this country anymore, they're getting worse. So we will renegotiate the deal, we accept Brexit, we're not looking to return to the EU.
Roger Miller, you asked a question. Do you want to come back on this?
Can I just about the claim?
Here's the microphone's coming your way.
Can I say about the claim that we are now fourth in export? It's been shown that that's actually to do with fluctuations in gold sales, which have fluctuated by a great deal. And in fact, over time, we're about sixth, and it hasn't changed much.
Well, we could talk all evening on Brexit. I think to be fair to many of the other topics, you will get your fair share. Don't worry. So, Edward Clay, are you in the audience? Edward Clay, stand up. Very well. Right next. Go ahead, Ed.
Thank you, Chairman. I would like to ask all the candidates how their party would propose to bring the income of local authorities like Epsom and Ewell into line with the responsibilities, including statutory duties, laid on them by central government.
Helen Maguire for the Liberal Democrats. Can I ask you to start with that one?
Sure, so thank you for that question. And obviously over the past few years what we've seen is funding to local governments decrease year on year, and as a result of that local councils, local authorities are finding it incredibly difficult to actually meet their statutory responsibilities, which obviously include education, social care, etc. And we're seeing this pan out all over Epsom and Ewell, Ashstead and Leatherhead at the moment, whether it's the lack of funding at the moment for SEN children, for example. Schools are meant to fund this fully, the ECHPs for children, and yet there isn't the funding for schools to fund this at the moment. And one of the things that the Liberal Democrats have said is that we will give councils more funding for ECHPs, so that actually the schools don't need to take it out of their budget. So that's one way that it would help as well. If we look at social care, one of the things that the Liberal Democrats have said that we will do is provide free personal care to those that need it. So again, that's really going to help local councils with their funding of these issues. But fundamentally, we have to review how the funding of local councils actually works, because at the moment it doesn't work and it's broken, and we would welcome a review on the funding.
Thank you. Myron Central Nathan. Your party is pledging to make substantial cuts to tax and substantial cuts to government spending. In the realm of local authorities, any particular areas that are going to get cut?
Not in terms of, I wouldn't say so to the local authority. I mean, local authorities are stretching up as it is. We're talking social care is over 40% of the budget in most councils, and social care is still not adequate enough to deal with the situation. £2.7 trillion worth of debt, an interest payment, I think the size of the education budget itself. So to put it bluntly, we are skint. So what do we need to do about it? I think that we need to think outside the box. Now, what we're proposing is something I don't think any other party has picked up. The Bank of England they printed a load of money during the pandemic, and they're actually paying voluntary interest on that. If that was stopped, or at least reduced, billions could be saved there. When we're talking about net zero targets, I made in my introductory talk there, I think we need to work towards a greener situation. The climate change situation is important. But I think the net zero, which is legally binding us, is actually a suicide note that is bankrupting the country. We don't have the technology, and we're forcing ourselves ahead of the technology. And Labour want to actually ban diesel and petrol cars in by 2030.
Can I just challenge there? Isn't your party's manifesto stating that you will scrap net zero targets and increase drilling for gas and oil?
Yeah.
I thought you were saying something slightly different.
Well, no, where technology is available, we go for it. But clean gas, let's go for it. Even oil, we have to be realistic with the fact that we're going to have to use fossil fuels. We're using it now. Renewables are not sufficient enough to drive this economy.
I think we're going off topic.
Okay, but I can carry on.
I'm sure you can.
You took that renewables.
Sorry, Stephen McKenna Green Party, obviously your party has really quite massive spending ambitions to tackle climate change and so forth. So on this narrow issue of dealing with day-by-day obligations of local authorities to provide services, how are you going to align, as the question has been asked, the income that they receive from central government to meet obligations rather than running into ever increasing debts? As we know, Surrey has a number of borough councils that have the record debts in the country.
It's a very complex picture. What I would say, my own council, just down the road, are always trumpeting how they've got very good reserves, which is very nice. But a lot of councils, as we know,
Talk closer to the mic.
bring it over. Better? Okay. The borough down the road, which I'm a councillor at, has got very good reserves, but there are a lot of councils in this country which are on the brink of going bust or have gone bust. Northampton, Croydon, Birmingham City Council, big one. The money has been taken away from local authorities over the years. The big grants that they used to be given by central government have vanished, so they are forced to take risks. They've invested in property, which if you have a property slump, that means closures of homes for care homes and things because the money isn't there for social care. If you're putting all your eggs in the property basket, we know the problems that can happen. I would say
you're referring perhaps to Woking.
of course.
And Reigate, if I'm not mistaken, actually has the lowest debt.
Exactly. So
how do you do it?
It's a good question. I'll be very fair, we've been run well for the last few years by a council that has cut...
Which party?
Conservatives, I'll say. But they have cut money to local charities. They've done a lot of other things which we have been rather concerned about. They've been unwilling to invest in renewables. I mean, we've only got, I think, 4 or 5 EV charging points in Reigate itself.
I appreciate how you will always want to stray onto green issues.
I know, but just to say on net zero, the point on net zero is, you don't know this maybe, but it's the CBI Economics said that net zero is the fastest growing bit of the economy. It grew at 9% in that zero report in February. It's worth 74 billion a year, and it's growing much faster than the rest of the economy. So that is sustainable growth, and that will give us more returns, and councils can be a part of that.
Okay, thanks very much. Quite briefly, if you would please, Murray Fraser, the Conservatives, followed by Mark Todd.
To return to the point that Helen made about SEND education provision, I know from speaking to parents that that's a very difficult process to go through and there are improvements to be made. The Conservative government has delivered £850 million to create 60,000 new places with local councils since 2010, and we've committed to increase SEND provision by a record £2.6 billion if elected. One thing that will not help with that is, and Lionel telling me I'm straying into another questions territory, is Labour's proposals for a 20% VAT on independent school fees. Because there are 900 SEND pupils in Epsom and Ewell that are educated at independent schools. And their parents are no longer able to afford those fees. They will be forced into the state sector, which means that the dedicated provision you need for each student will be spread amongst more students.
How does your party propose to bring the income to local authorities like Epsom into line with legislative? Raise taxes, reduce public expenditure? What is the mechanism for bringing these? Sorry. The question is, what would your party do to bring local authority finances, back into the black?
I think one thing that is needed throughout the public sector is greater efficiency in the spending of public money. If you look at the Liberal Democrat-led Moore Valley District Council, they spent over £120,000 on massive planters that now litter Leatherhead High Street, which nobody likes. That's how.
Sorry, we need to just interject there because it was actually Surrey County Council's requirement. It was a safety requirement for the planters to be there, and it was Surrey County Council councillors with Moore Valley councillors who both agreed to that. You had to have it there because the high street is both pedestrian and a highway. If it was a purely pedestrian high street, then you wouldn't need the planters.
I'm not
so
saying
that's where you need to
I'm
start.
not saying there was no need for pedestrian barriers, but it was accepted that the size of them, the
amount of money that was spent on one side of the arts.
You couldn't get it any cheaper. If you wanted something that was not as large, then you'd have metal balustrades. But they are exceedingly more expensive than the planters. So that's why the planters room is the most cost-effective way to have something.
I'm not sure the question is really resolved just on planters. Mark, at the top, if, and it is assumption, and I acknowledge that, if your party forms the next government, is there really going to be any significant change to the fortunes of local authorities compared to what they are now?
So we have an issue where we've got councils of all stripes in serious financial trouble right now. So Northamptonshire Conservative, Nottingham Labour, Northumberland Conservative, Slough Conservative, Woking Liberal Democrat, Birmingham Labour. It's not to one party. What we're saying as a Labour Party, when we take charge, is we're going to give longer term funding settlements for councils. We'll give them more security. We believe it will mean they can plan better. Also, we're going to stop this ridiculous begging bowl system, which the current government does, where they kind of put up kind of prizes and councils go off and do kind of plans and then may win these prizes or not. And it's extremely wasteful. We'd rather just give the money to the councils, a fair funding settlement to resolve all these issues, and that's what Labour's going to do.
Mr. Quay, which candidate do you feel answered the question?
I haven't had a chance to answer the question yet.
No, I know. I'm not going to give you one just now.
I think, Chairman, that they ducked it. The question really for this country is that for the last few years we have been talked to about levelling up. And that is really a concept framed around geography. But we all know that living around here in the most prosperous part of the UK, there are huge gaps and tears in the fabric of our society, and all of them need addressing. And every single candidate wishes to do more about some of them. The question is how.
Okay, and we need to move on. Time is ticking by, so I'm going
You
to
still
ask...
didn't give me a chance to answer that question.
I'm not going to, because you were told you wouldn't necessarily be asked for every question. There will be balance.
But a well-being economy is the only way we're going to address it.
There will be balance.
A new economic model is the only way.
Over the whole evening. Because I am going to ask you to respond first to the next question. Ross MacDonald. Ross MacDonald? Get the hands up. Look there. The shadows.
Hi folks. So I see an increasing amount of antisocial behaviour going on in Epsom High Street, especially at night time. What do you guys plan to do differently to ensure this stops going forwards?
As promised, Gina?
The first thing I'd say is that we need to have a local police station. I think it's absurd that the constituency we're going to have a local police station. And I would put it next to the fire station because the two emergency services should be next to each other. The other thing we need to do is ask questions of why Surrey Council has underspent last year by 8.7 million in its justice budget. I want to know why that underspent. Also, that should be going to police on the beat. We should be seeing more community police out there. Thirdly, the other thing is these young people have nowhere to go and nothing to do. We have to, as part of our wellbeing economy, provide services, places where young people can go so they're not on the streets. The other thing we have to also think about is lighting on our streets. There is an issue, not just with crime, but also safety for women and girls that I speak to all the time, that they do not feel safe in some parts of this constituency because of the lighting issues. So there's a lot we need to do. But the issue is also, what do we do with them when we prosecute people? Because our prisons are full. We don't have legal aid. The entire justice system is broken. And what we need to do is think differently about that. And that starts with also parental responsibility. Outside the station one evening recently, there were an 8 and 9-year-old who were causing trouble outside in the high street. It was dangerous, and somebody coming off the trains asked them to stop. Next day there was actually a complaint from the parents saying, "Why did you tell my children off?" I'm sorry, but there has to be some parental responsibility as well that goes into this.
Okay, thank you. Stephen McKenna, please.
agree with what Jean has said, but I also think there's a lot of money being wasted at the moment in the council. Temporary accommodation, emergency accommodation, is costing a lot. Across the country it's 1.45 billion a year. In this council,
and you're connecting that to antisocial behaviour?
I am connecting it because it's money that could be spent on youth clubs and other things that would be good for youth and to engage with youth in this area. So there's a lot of money being wasted by councils, and that needs to be tackled. Youth clubs have been closed, or we've got several youth clubs in my borough next door, which have been actually provided by developers and schemes, but they've actually not been opened.
Right, so have you got any different ideas from what's already been expressed?
I think we're all in agreement that more visible police presence on the streets is the best way to deter crime. That's why I've been speaking to the Surrey Police and Crime Commissioner about just that. The Conservative government's planning to roll out its programme of hotspot policing, so we have 3 to 4.5 million more police patrolling hotspots, and I would want to see that and would advocate to see that in places like Epsom Town Centre and Kingston Road in North Leatherhead.
Helen Maguire, former military policeman. You might have some insights into
Thank you, absolutely. So obviously as a former military police officer, crime and reduction in crime is incredibly important to me. But I should also say that I'm a scout leader, so I work with the youth, and I understand that, and I recognise how important it is that we have youth services. And today what we're seeing is the majority of youth services are run by volunteers, they're run by charities, because the funding in them is being cut by Surrey County Council, and it's just not good enough. And if I can just talk about PCSOs, since this Surrey Police and Crime Commission has been in, PCSOs have halved in Surrey. They have halved, and at the same time, her budget for her office, Surrey this is working on, has increased by 70%. It is absolutely vital that we get more PCSOs on the beat, and the reason it's vital is because we need the knowledge and the intelligence on the ground. That's how policing works. Without that knowledge and intelligence, you can't feed it up the chain. You need to build relationships with people, relationships with the shop owners, the people that are running the trains, so actually we know what's going on. Just the other day, I was in the town centre and we were setting up a stall, and there was a collision. There was 2 youths on an e-scooter that crashed into the car. There was no police officer present. The guys on the e-scooter got up, and I chased after them down the street because they were leaving the scene of the incident. I asked them for their details. There was no one there. I didn't have my phone on me, so I couldn't call anyone.
Is this landing don't much longer?
No, we desperately need more PCSOs on the beat.
Very, very quickly, please. What's your party's policy on tackling crime?
So I think I would add something different to what everyone else said. I agree, lots of good points here, but what I'd also say, when people say cut waste, you say, what waste? Well, when you speak to people, officers off the record, because they don't want to speak too openly, the amount of policemen to staff ratio is horrendous. You've got like 55% of the workforce of police officers, 45% are staff members, often very undertrained, who work from home, can only be contacted by email. Right? And so the police officers are up in arms going, how are we being orchestrated by this team? Also, the idea of the hate crime. I don't want to belittle what a hate crime is, but police officers are telling me that their time is being wasted on very, very trivial matters to stop them from going to court and wasting taxpayers' money. Again, waste. That's the problem.
Mark, do you want to chip in on this one?
Sure, so the fact we don't have a police station is absolutely ridiculous, and unfortunately it was the Conservatives who effectively sold the police station here, which is, this town is too big. The cars have to go all the way to Woking if they have to put someone in a cell. It takes police officers out of actions. Hawley? Okay. That sounds Woking, but okay. We'll go with Hawley. It's just too far. It's too far. Labour will put 13,000 more police officers on the beat. We'll get more police officers on the streets, looking after people, looking after our communities, and we'll get more money into the youth services to get kids and other youths more active, doing positive things, not negative things. So I think Labour have a strong offer here, and as your local MP, I will fight to get that police station back.
What do you want to see happen in Epsom?
I'm pleased to hear across the board there's a desire for more police presence. I think some of the ideas around building more youth communities are pretty interesting as well. So looking forward to seeing some of it materialise over the next couple of years.
Thanks very much. Right, is 9 Salon in the audience. Yeah. Okay, it's there.
Good evening. My question to the panel is, if you become MP, will you call for all arms sales to Israel to stop immediately?
The situation in Israel and Gaza is a very emotive topic. I have always traditionally been a supporter of the state of Israel. It is a country in the Middle East where you can be a woman or a homosexual and you're treated equally, and as somebody who spent time in the Middle East, I know that is not common in the region. I also think if 250 young people had been slaughtered at Glastonbury, we would feel justified in defending ourselves against that kind of existential attack. However, I think the level of civilian casualties we are seeing is now disproportionate. Nobody wants to see children, particularly, suffering the way that they are. And I think it's also not in Israel's interest to use disproportionate force at this point in time, because even if you manage to get rid of and entirely eradicate Hamas, if you have created a whole generation of traumatized Palestinians, Hamas too will spring up, and that will be even worse. And I think the best way we can resolve this situation is to engage in diplomatic conversations with all parties. Israel is an ally, we cannot turn our backs on.
Okay, so if you accept that the force that has been used is disproportionate, would you follow that belief through with stopping arms sales to Israel?
Personally, morally, yes, I would.
She said you would. Gina Miller, what would you do on this thorny one?
I think if you look at what the International Court of Justice has said, I believe that they've broken international law, and we are by supplying arms to them, we have to stop immediately. And I think we have to also be pushing for a ceasefire as soon as possible. But my biggest concern about what's going on with Israel and Gaza right now is what comes if we have a presidential election in the US and it's Trump that comes into power. Because he is not going to help the situation in any way, shape or form in Ukraine or in Gaza and Israel. And I think we have to be very mindful that we as a nation have to step up and use our soft power, not just the stopping of the sale of arms, because I do think it's illegal, we've broken international law there. But we'll wait to see what well, we haven't seen the advice that the government has got. Labour says if they win, they will publish the advice. I hope they do that as soon as possible. But we have to step up. We have to use our soft power.
Of arms or not?
I would definitely stop the sale of arms, but I think what we're doing is illegal.
Yeah. And I think you're referring to the International Court of Justice that has said that there might be a case of genocide which needs to be looked into. Mark, Todd for Labour.
Yeah, on a personal and moral stance, yes, I would. The whole situation needs to be de-escalated. It's a completely horrendous, terrible situation. We need the UN to go in my view. We need a two-state solution which is respectful for all parties, which creates two sustainable states. Two states, which can live together with their head held high, which Palestine hasn't been able to do for a long time now. So yes, I would on a personal moral stance.
Any candidate to my left, and I mean physically, not politically, any different position on stopping arms sales to Israel? Would you carry on, or would you stop them? One word answers.
Stop.
Stop.
Honestly, I have to be honest, I actually don't know. I'm sorry to say.
One of the more honest answers we could have. Okay, Mr. Salam.
Yes.
I think the question probably indicates your view. Is there any?
No, absolutely. I was encouraged by that, so thanks to everyone. Particularly with Mark, so get the UN in, get some sense of dignity back for the Palestinians, come to a peaceful two-state solution.
No,
that's the way to go.
Thanks for asking that question. It's a difficult one. Okay, Robert Clack. He's raised his hand. There it is. Thank you very much, Mr. Clack, and welcome, if I may say, to you and to many others who have joined this constituency known as Epsom and Ewell for the first time from Leatherhead and Ashley. You are from Leatherhead. You are welcome. Thank you for travelling across the constituency, and maybe next time, it might be that for 5 years, we'll find a more central location, no offence to NESCOT. Anyway, fire over your question.
Actually, it's very pertinent. I do live in North Leatherhead, and North Leatherhead is one of our most impoverished parts of our constituency. My question, I'm a volunteer at our local food bank, and the Epsom Ewell Food Bank last year distributed more than 10,100 food parcels to our local residents across the borough. It's the highest number in a year since it opened in 2012. What steps would your party take to end the need for food banks in our country?
Stephen McKenna for Green first.
Thank you for the question. Yes, it's a tragedy. We've got many, many people in this country who are working and still can't make ends meet. That's teachers, nurses, others, who are struggling, and it's an absolute disgrace. One of the things that we will be doing is we have a very bold set of tax plans, and we are going to spend big. Now, don't make any comments about that, because it's, as I said before, the IFS has said it's a bold plan. It will enable us to take direct action on water bills, on energy bills, on public transport. These costs, unaffordable rents as well, all these costs together make it almost impossible for people to live these days. It's been allowed to happen. Privatisation, the last 40 years has taken to come to this point. But this is where we are now, and it's a total disgrace. We will put a lot of money into all the sorts of services that we're talking about here that are necessary to keep people from going into poverty. Now, we're on the edge of a Dickensian type of scenario here. I really believe it. I think we really are at the cusp of something really awful happening, which is it's been happening in slow motion, but it's speeding up. And unfortunately, the big corporations, the big companies have been allowed to do this. They don't pay much tax, a lot of them. They're not paying into the system, but they're taking the money from sales on the high street, wherever they are, online. We've got to do something about all of that. We've got to make sure that our high streets function, that they deliver services that are affordable, that are cheap. We want food prices to come down. Everywhere we are losing land for development, we're losing land for food. Wherever we build houses, we should be providing allotments and opportunities for people to grow their own food. I grew up in London, where we had a family allotment, and that's something that I think a lot of people would like to have, but it's a shortage of space.
Okay, allotments. Can I move to Helen McGuire? Thank you, Stephen.
Sure, thank you. And nice to meet you. I obviously also help out at the food bank in Leatherhead. So there are a number of things that I think we need to look at. So there are a huge amount of people that I've met there who are obviously on universal credit. And this Conservative government originally gave £20 extra per week, and that was then reversed. So first of all, we need to reverse that to actually give these families a chance. And what we have to recognise is that a huge amount of people who are using food banks they're working already, but they still can't make ends meet because the wages are not high enough. And that's why, for example, in the social care sector, we want to increase wages by £2 per hour. But it's not just that, we're also looking at energy bills. And one of the things that we would like to roll out is a new emergency home energy plan to those households on the lowest incomes, so we can actually help them get renewable energy into their houses and actually bring down the energy prices. When we look at food costs, the other thing that we are looking at as well is investing in British farming to bring that cost down. So £1 billion would go into the new Environment Land Management Scheme, which hopefully would help to bring some of that cost down. And I think the other challenge that we have, again, with some people that I've met at the food bank, is this wait that we have between when people actually get onto universal credit, up to 5 weeks before they actually get any funding. So we need to look at that and revise it and try and reduce it as much as possible, so that actually people don't need to go to food banks while they're actually waiting for universal credit.
Okay, thanks very much. Mine and Senator Nathan, your party is a relatively new party on the scene, certainly here in Epsom. Is your party, in connection with this question, because I really genuinely don't know. Would you describe your party as an egalitarian party, a party that wants to promote equality, or are you, in favour of the status quo, the growing gap between rich and poor?
I'm in favour of growing the economy and making work pay and incentivise, putting more money in all of your pockets. That's essentially what it is. I mean, what the question is the cost of living crisis. And going back to net zero, the reason why renewable energy is growing so fast is because the taxpayer, our money, is propping it up, which means our bills are more expensive. We're some of the most expensive energy in the West. And so that is affecting the cost of living crisis. What about the tax threshold? Teachers and nurses are going to be paying high rate tax because no one's lifting the tax threshold. So everyone's going to be paying more tax. That's why people are going to go to food banks. What about housing? The housing target everybody knows here is 300,000. Do you know what that was for? Net immigration at 170,000. Do you know what net immigration actually is? 750,000. So we're not building up houses, so rents are soaring. They go up 20-30%. That is affecting the cost of living crisis, and that is why it's driving people into poverty. And so there's such a blind spot in people's housing policy. They just don't neglect this.
Your party is going to raise the personal tax threshold from 12,500 to 20,000.
Yes.
Are you going to cut state benefits?
No.
Okay. Gina, food banks.
Food banks. So if you, I'm trusted in trust, and it is horrific what's happening to our country. But it's not just food banks; it's also the return of Victorian diseases we've not seen before. The facts are stark. We have an aging population. We have a population that's suffering with mental health issues that's only going to increase. 5.3 million people who are estimated to be out of work on long-term sickness. Our model doesn't work. Our economic does not work and will not be funded by the public purse as we go forwards. So it's about, in my party's view, the True and Fair Party believe we need to transition to a different sort of model where we actually help people in the high street before they get into crisis. So well-being hubs where people can come in and get support. For example, there are 825,000 pensioners who don't realise that they can qualify for pension credit because they actually don't know how to go online and do that. We need to have financial help in the high street. We need to have quicker intervention in mental health and social help much earlier before people get into crisis. When it comes to food and water, because it's not just food, it's also water, we need a national food and water strategy. We are one of the few countries in the world who are facing climate crisis without a food and water strategy. We have to have one as soon as possible. And speaking with the Countryside Alliance, as I do with our campaign, they have said this is something that's so missing in all of the parties' manifestos. But locally, the elephant in the room is the economy. Unless we grow the economy, we do not have more money to put to local government. We need to have a 4.5% real-time increase to local government to actually be able to fund what we need to fund in the community. We have to grow the economy, and it's about things like the local authority pension funds being told that they should invest in UK equities, the fact that we need a GB ISA, so rather than 800 billion sitting in cash ISAs, they're put to work investing in local businesses in the UK. We should have these changes, and we need them quickly. A UK sovereign fund that should be seeded by
we need to move on to another candidate, to be fair.
We need an economy that works.
I used to volunteer at a food bank, but I was really just stacking shelves, and I wanted to speak to somebody on the ground who really knew the circumstances of people using food banks. So I went to go visit Epsom Food Bank. And the reality is there's a lot of factors that lead to somebody using a food bank. For example, mental health issues, it creates a cycle of poverty that people find it difficult to escape. So I think as a good local constituency MP, a very valuable role that you can play is to bring together different agencies to ensure that people can escape that poverty cycle. In order to bring costs down, we do need to keep reducing inflation, which has been reduced from 11% to 2%. And we do need to, as I said in my opening speech, always have a safety net for those most vulnerable, which is why we're going to be extending the Household Support Fund until September 2024, which will bring total support to £3 billion. And that's to help really vulnerable families with the cost of things like food and utilities.
Thank you. Mark Todd.
So I think we all remember 2010, and it wasn't as bad as this. With a Labour government, we will turn the situation around, but it is going to take a bit of time. So first of all, we're going to have a stable economy. So we're going to work on the cost of living crisis. We're going to renegotiate the Brexit deal. Food prices should come down with a softer Brexit. We're going to create GB Energy, which will bring down energy prices, because renewable energy is actually the cheapest energy now. It's not the most expensive. And I go to Parliament and advise MPs on energy costs as part of the old party group. So I do know what I'm talking about on that, and renewable energy is cheaper. So there's a whole set of things. That we can do. But also, Labour is going to make work pay. We're going to ban. We're going to basically transform things like 0 hours contracts, and also we're going to ban fire and rehire. So work can pay, and it must pay.
Two more questions.
Can we have a woman's question?
Andrew Sutton. Andrew Sutton.
Can we not have a woman's question? You've been dominated by men every single question.
The questions have been selected on the merit of reception. The questions blind as to who asked them. So, Andrew Sutton.
Directed by a man?
No, the questions were selected blind as to who had asked them. Andrew Sutton? No, Andrew Sutton. Okay. There's a question from a Francesca. Where are you then? Better have turned up after.
I'll be Francesca.
Is Francesca here? All right then. You want gender equality? I've got some backup questions. Let me see if there's one from the lady. Yeah, well, Becky Wood. Yeah, Becky Wood here. There you go.
Thank you very much. I'm a woman and proud to be asking you a question.
Well, it's the same question though. It's about food banks again, isn't it? Yes.
Well, it's about the economy.
Is it a different angle? Go on then.
Would you like to ask?
Yeah, weave it into what the debate was
Okay.
doing.
According to data from the Office for National Statistics, we've never been so wealthy as a nation. Any of you can go online and look it up, our net worth. You'll see we've never been wealthier, and you'll see that we even got wealthier during COVID. So why then do we have record numbers of people using food banks? So read that as why do we have a huge amount of poverty in our country? And how might cutting £12 billion per year from the projected welfare budget help this situation? Are there any other solutions?
Let's just have some quick responses then to this supplementary.
I'll give you a good quick answer. A lot of people who are paying rent are using 40% of their income to pay rent. In many parts of London, it's higher. So people are actually being squeezed by landlords. Potentially. Well, yes, I know at the moment with higher mortgage costs, landlords are also suffering. I can say that because I am one. So I know what I'm talking about. But there's a real. We don't want to build houses because that's not going to help the affordability problem.
That was actually the question that I was put off asking.
Well,
Because
I
it
can
was
deal
for
with
the
that
land.
one.
Which was, what are the candidates' plans for building new housing?
Yeah, well, we will build homes, but they're going to be social homes because that's what the problem is. People cannot afford to buy the big executive houses that builders want to build, and by the way, they want to build those because that's what they get the best prices for. They don't want to do social housing. There are rules in the planning system that enable them to get off without doing housing. I'll give you an example. The London plan says that if you build on a site, a housing site, you have to do 50% of it as affordable housing. What does that mean in practice? What the average is, you get 9% affordable housing because the developers argue that they've had to pay too much of the land, bless them. But The reality is that if you don't do social housing and if you don't cap rents in the private sector and you don't provide tenants with some sort of security, the situation is going to get worse and worse and worse. And eventually, our children, grandchildren, will not be able to become homeowners. It will be quite impossible for them to do that. So the 300,000 houses a year that the other parties are talking about is frankly disastrous. We need to do social housing, and our plan is to do 150,000 social houses, or council houses, if you prefer, a year. And that's across the whole country.
Mark Todd, Labour, I think there's been some confusion as to whether Labour may or may not relax planning restrictions on development of green belt, or only relax planning restrictions in respect of brownfield sites. Can you clarify that and also explain what your position is in terms of development of any green belt in Epsom?
So my personal position on the green belt and Epsom Ewell is that the local plan is wrong, that it should not be building on playing fields or green fields or Hook Road Arena. We need to fight to protect that land.
Unless there's a candidate that's in favour of growing houses.
We all agree. You're all on the demonstration against building on green belt.
I think we can accept that. Okay, now, just to prove that the questions were selected on merit blind, we've discovered that one person got 2 questions through. So I'll ask it myself, actually. It ends up asking if you're in favour of proportional representation as an electoral system, but particularly in the context of Epsom and Ewell, where it is suggested that parties other than the Conservative Party are splitting a vote of those who would not wish to vote Conservative. Context being, since 1945, the Conservative Party have had an absolute majority of the votes cast in all elections except 1945, when they got 49.99%, and in 1997 and 2001. So even if all opposition parties did combine, they would still lose. But nevertheless, I think it's a question that has been asked on a number of occasions. It was probably the most common question submitted. And I'm going to ask first Gina Miller this issue. Under the first past the post system, for example, is your party, in a sense, splitting the vote that is not Conservative?
So I would go in all its forms. It's actually 154 years since this constituency has been Conservative, not since 1945. So in all its forms, yes, it has. And the Electoral Reform Society was formed in 1884. So the idea that we're going to get electoral reform anytime soon, especially if there's a massive Labour landslide, is for the birds. But the idea of, as a democracy, we should not be able to stand and offer people a positive choice is not democracy. I was visited by the Lib Dem candidate and asked to step down because I was taking away the win from her. I did ask, did she go and ask all the other parties to step down too, because obviously that would be democracy. But I find it extraordinary that in a country where nearly 40% of the electorate is saying they do not trust the establishment parties, that they will not turn out to vote. When it comes to 18 to 23-year-olds, 25% of them didn't bother to register for this election, and of that 75% who did, 40% have said they've now decided there's no party for them to vote for. It is my democratic right and that of my colleagues in the True and Fair Party to stand up and offer an alternative, a positive vision for the future. And it is the democratic right of everybody in this room and around the country to make a decision of who they want to vote for.
So you're in favour of PR, but you don't see it happening?
I can't see the Labour. I mean, none of the main parties will bring in PR. It's not in their interest.
Okay, Mark Todd of the Labour Party. The Labour leaflet circulated in Epsom and Ewell have graphics of opinion polls putting Labour nearly equal with the Conservatives in Epsom and Ewell, but so do the Liberal Democrats have leaflets with graphics of opinion polls putting the Liberal Democrats neck and neck with the Conservatives. What's your view, effectively, on that question, PR, and the question of parties of the centre, left or left, standing aside to change political colour of particular constituencies?
So, first past the post gives us a stable system, which I think people like in Britain. However, on a personal basis, I actually support proportional representation. I think it is a good model. In terms of the kind of the bar charts in the various pamphlets, there are various polls which put Labour as the main contender, actually one with Labour in the lead, others which put the Lib Dems in the lead. I think the thing is, this is democracy. We should all compete for your vote. We should all get out here, be passionate, explain what we're going to do, say why we should be the best MP, and then you choose. So no, I don't think Gina should have stood down for the Liberal Democrats, nor will I ever stand down for the Liberal Democrats. Because it's your right to choose whether you want to vote True or Fair, or you want to vote Labour. So I don't think anyone should stand down.
You must have a right to reply.
Oh, well, firstly, I just do need to check, Jeannie Millie, yes, we did have a meeting, but I actually asked what she was trying to achieve here.
No, I have witnesses. You asked me to step down. You told me you were winning.
No.
I have witnesses.
Sorry,
You've also been going on.
As a lawyer, I'm willing to offer my services as an arbitrator.
Present it any time you want.
Yeah, okay.
Let her finish, let her finish.
Okay, so I think, look, the Lib Democrat Party have always been campaigning for proportional representation. It's absolutely clear that the political system here in the UK is broken, and we want proportional representation, not just nationally, but in local councils as well. And if we look at the bar charts, I think what I find really disappointing is that there are so many bar charts out there, and it's very easy for people to put graphs on literature, but they don't actually put the background or the methodology of those graphs. So, for example, there is a tactical voting website called Best for Britain, which actually donates to the Labour Party. In fact, last year they gave just under £60,000 to the Labour Party, and funny enough, it's on the Labour leaflets. If we also look at some of the polls about More in Common, what they do is any of the don't know votes at the moment they add into Labour. And there are other polls out there like Survation, for example, which are left-leaning polls, because if you look at them, they actually predict a complete wipeout pretty much of Plaid Cymru and SNP. That's not going to happen. If you know anyone in Wales, then that's not going to happen. So what I would say to everyone is, please do look at the background of the polls, try to understand what's going on. And at the moment, you've got 7 in 10 polls, if you look at the aggregate website, 7 in 10 polls actually have Lib Dems in second place, and of those, 3 of them are winning. But it's really important also that you look on the ground exactly what's happening here, and gain an understanding of what's happened in local elections recently. In the local police and crime commission election, they came fourth. The Lib Democrats came second by 309 votes to the Conservatives, and we've taken 2 seats off the Conservatives in South Leatherhead, the new part of the constituency, in the past 13 months.
Okay.
My last factually incorrect again.
Thank you, Mark. Yeah, I'm going to invert this question somewhat by asking Myron Central Nathan of the Reform Party, where it's perceived by a lot of commentators that Nigel Farage's and your party's intervention is going to take votes away from the Conservative and create this super Labour majority. So are you, on the other side, splitting a vote from the centre-right and right of the
Well, I would say, sure, I would say the Tory party was broken a long time ago, and they could have lost several by-elections on the trot, which shows that they were broken a while ago. So what we're doing, Reform, I think we're getting people who just said, I'm totally fed up with politics, they're all the same, they're all saying the same things, nothing's going to change, and when they see Reform's policy, they're like, ooh, that is something different. That is something radical. So those who have stayed at home are coming out and saying, do you know what, I am going to vote for Reform, and I am going to go out there. And we're seeing that in the polls. Nationally, we are second place consistently in many polls. The Conservatives are dying before our eyes, but the first past the post system...
But all those votes that you believe you may get, they're not going to be translated into members of Parliament.
That's what
they're going to be translated most probably in the loss of Conservative seats.
What they're voting for is change, and can I just map out the situation? It's a national mandate for Nigel Farage and a few of the seats that we will get, so we should be at 7 or 8 now that we're predicted at least, so we've still got some time to go into Parliament, and what's going to happen is you'll get a realignment of centre-right politics. You'll get defections from the Tories and from Labour, and you'll see Westminster change radically.
Yeah, that question of realignment. So it would seem the Conservative Party have been on a rightward journey to a degree because they've lost a lot of their pro-EU MPs and so forth. So, Mara Fraser, do you foresee post this election there being a kind of realignment with the Conservative Party and the Reform Party in some shape or form?
I mean, it really depends on the makeup of the Conservative Party after the election. The Conservative Party is going to look very different to how it looks now. In any event, a lot of the old guard is standing down, and there's a fresh new generation of Conservative candidates that want to do things differently, but we'll just have to see which constituencies deliver Conservative MPs, whether any constituencies deliver Reform MPs. But what I would say is, while Myra running here doesn't help me, I welcome him doing it because I truly believe that everyone's constituency should have the chance to vote for somebody that speaks to what they believe.
Thank you. Okay. The Green Party, just to conclude that topic, is in favour of PR, I know that. So we do actually have to wrap up. Apart from those of you who I know suffers for punishment from want to get home for the 9 o'clock Prime Ministerial debate between Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak, we've got just enough time, in fact, a little quick wrap up from each candidate, honestly no more than 20 or 30 seconds. From the table.
I'm offering to give you my service for 5 years, use my experience to help you and your family and your communities, whatever comes along. We cannot predict what that is, but I promise you, I will fight for you.
Thank you, Mark.
So I work hard to fix our broken roads, our polluted rivers and our underperforming train service. I'm fighting to make sure we get smaller affordable homes on brownfield sites, saving our green belt. I work to get more police on our streets and a police station for Epsom. And I'll also work with the Children Group to try and fix the children problems there.
Britain is broken, we need radical change, we need to shake up Westminster, so please vote for.
Sure, so we need change in this constituency, and if I'm elected as your MP, I will fight for the issues that I've been campaigning on. So to actually get the hospital bill that's been promised for 10 years and simply not been delivered, to help cut the cost of living crisis, and to hold these water companies to account for the sewage that they're piling into our rivers. I'm hardworking, I'm dedicated, I'm local, and my background is from the military, a police officer, so crime is incredibly important to me. Recently I've met with the Chalk Pit Group and the Green Belt Group, and these are really important issues. And if I'm elected here, I'm dedicated to the area, and I just want to make sure that change happens and you get the service that you need.
Not everybody appreciates, because we don't get that much media coverage, but not everybody appreciates that we will be spending a lot of extra money on the NHS and social care, a really fundamental change. Without it, without that big expenditure, all the studies that are out there are saying that the NHS and social care is going to go into decline over the next few years. We will also be taking into public ownership the water companies, the energy companies and the railways, and that will make a massive difference to everybody's lives.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Save the Green Belt as well.
Not the incumbent MP, as you know, Chris Grayling stood down, but as the incumbent party, I'm giving the last word to Myra Fraser.
Integrity has been the theme of my career, and I am determined to bring that integrity to Westminster, starting first and foremost by being an excellent local constituency MP for you, because no local issue is too small or unimportant for me to deal with on your behalf. I want to do politics better, and I want to do it for you as your next Conservative MP for Epsom, Ewell, Ashtead and Leatherhead. Thank you.
On my radio clock, that was 8:30 precisely. Well done. So thank you very much, audience, for coming from far and wide over across the constituency. Thanks again from NESCOT for hosting. They've done a really professional job setting everything up. And to our voluntary stewards, thank you. So that's it.